10 main points, and we'll run through them pretty quick. So the first one is identify and remove the barriers to success. This is the first thing we do in our process. You can flip to the next slide. Identify and remove barriers to success. We have a whole approach where we go in and we investigate, okay, what's happening inside the organization? What is the present state of the organization? How does it work? How does it interact? How does it communicate? How are decisions made? How are things put into action? How do people work together? How do people not work together? And so, and out of that, we identify barriers. And that's where we go back to where we get into clients say, on the outside, make us look great. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but first you got to look great on the inside. I went to get my haircut 20 years ago. That's not the last time I got my haircut, but it was a time. And my friend David cut my hair at the time. And I walked in, and I sat in David's chair, and I said, David, I would like a new look. And David said, no. And I'm thinking, I got a lot of junctions. I've got a lot of things I'm calling David inside right now. And I'm like, who are you to tell me that I can't have a new look? And he said, well, who are you to sit in my chair and not have done your internal work so that you could come in here and to demonstrate how you're a different person? Then I can give you a different look. Now, David was a good friend, so he could get away. He had the right to get away with me. But can you imagine if we actually dealt with each other that way? If we let our spouses and our partners not leave the house unless they looked their very best every day, if we made sure we were each in really good shape every day, if our employees were in really good shape, if our congregants were in really good shape, if we invested at that level that David invested in me, imagine that world. What would come out, and if you were willing to live like that. And so anyway, that's cool. Okay, so identify and remove barriers to success. Conduct a mission audit. We have a whole process about how we go in. We look at communication materials, we look at business planning documents, we look at strategic plans, we look at marketing materials, we study websites. We also look at all of that for the organizations that our clients are competing with. So, and if they're nonprofits, we look at their peer groups because there are no competitors in the nonprofit sector. And however, there is competition for funding. And so we look at those peers that are competing for funding from the same resources because we need to understand what are those funders looking for, what's their agenda, and what are the other organizations saying that might get more attention than what our clients are saying. And this is very hard for a lot of organizations to understand because everyone is so sure that their agenda should be the most important agenda to everyone else, right? And I certainly feel like, what I'm saying is, right? But it's only important if it's important to you. And so, and that's really what the game is every day, whether we're in the pulpit or whether we're giving a talk or whether we're doing a one-on-one with someone. Are we connecting? Is what I'm saying to you right now relevant? Is what I'm saying to you right now compelling? Have I got your attention and have I stirred you? Are you wrestling with what we're talking about here? That's what comes out of conducting a mission audit. It's what we did with Shanta in a really fabulous process working on the business plan when we had to go to Lily and demonstrate to Lily the sustainability of what Scoop is up to. And we were successful. So, and Lily voted with their pocketbook on that one. Okay, next one, train your employees to be ambassadors. The bottom line here is, can every one of your team members, board members, employees, congregants, donors, funders, whoever, talk about the mission of your organization? If the answer is no, you want to train them. You want to make sure they understand what the organization does, what the organization's vision is for how the world will be different, what the organization does every day to bring about that vision, and what your principles and values are. And why is that? Because at that Sunday afternoon barbecue or football game party or whatever it is, that individual is your organization. That individual is the CEO of your organization. That individual is the minister of your congregation. That CEO is, that person is the person, and you don't know who they're interacting with. They could be the next customer, they could be the next donor, they could be the next member, they could be the next person that can help forward your agenda. So you want to make sure that your entire team is serving as ambassadors for your organization. Number 4, know yourself and lead with your strengths. We help our clients play the game that they're good at. The first thing most of our nonprofit clients come in and they say, many of them, they say, John, we want to be like Susan G. Komen, because they're considered the top of their game with corporate sponsorships and partnerships and raising millions of dollars, and everyone wants to be like Komen. Of course, until they tripped about a year and a half ago. We don't hear that as much anymore. But people want to be like the other guy. And our philosophy is we want you to be you. Because you're special. Each one of you is special. Each one of your organizations is unique. And it has heart. And it has soul. And it's taken on a mission about bringing about change in the world and providing needed services and products that will help make people's lives better. Isn't that at the end of the day what business and philanthropy and religion is about fulfilling our needs and our sense of what it is to be alive. My dad taught me that faith is about what you do every moment of, how you handle every moment of your life between birth and death. And I think it's about having faith in all that we do, in business and in religion and so on. Yes?
I want to pose a question to you.
Yes.
And it rips off of something Dallas had said earlier, which is sort of, we sometimes Americanize our context. And we sort of have a cultural narrative that success equals growth. But I wonder, in the mission-driven context, so let's talk about Jesus for a second. Like he got up to a total of 12 disciples. Like, not bad, not huge, but then they did a lot, right? So the hundreds of thousands of people who are now disciples of Christ, like he only did 12, not so big. So I wonder, like in this knowing of yourself and mission-driven, how does knowing your own definition, either personally or your organization's definition of success, weigh in?
It's a great question. You know, I get asked a lot as a business owner, what's your exit plan? What's your exit strategy? I'm like, death? I'm like, I'm not in here to get out. I'm in here to be in, right? And I think as it relates to your great question, and I turn to what I've learned from the Buddhist tradition is, am I in my spot? You know, at each moment, am I where I need to be, doing what I need to be doing to fulfill my reason for being here? And growth can be talked about in many different ways, not necessarily in number of employees, not necessarily in revenue, maybe not even necessarily in impact. But there's a lot of ways that we can mature, that we become more effective, that we become more in touch, more grounded, more genuine, more real. I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary with my wife in September. We're working very hard and looking at what does it mean to be intimate with one another. You know, not an easy question, and not one that's particularly comfortable to look at. So we're in a program, we're in a structure to look at intimacy and developing what does the next 10 years of intimacy look like in our marriage. And what would happen if we had more intimacy in our marriage? How would that affect our children? How would that affect our neighbors? How would that affect our employees? How would that affect our friends? How would that affect all the organizations that we participate in and invest in, and so on? So that's just another way to look at growth. And there's no right answer here. It's really looking at what game do you want to play and picking off that game. So, okay, I'm going to speed along here. Number 5, know your competition. And so this is really just studying who you're competing with. Competition is a phenomenal thing, and I'm a very competitive person. I like competing, but I need to know who I'm competing with, and I need to know what they're doing, and I need to know what my strategies are. This is why I love the world of strategy. Every summer I do a father-son retreat, and we have a canoe race, and I usually win the canoe race, not because I'm the strongest dad in the back paddling, but because I always cut around that committee boat when we circle back to come back to the starting line. I do it better than any other dad there. And I do it enough that I pick up enough speed or headway that I can win the race. It's all about strategy. It has nothing to do with strength or speed. So strategy is very key when you're going, because we want to be efficient and effective with our time and resources as well. Okay, number 6. We talked about this. Play a game you can win. Don't try and play the other guy's game. That's just silly. That's their game. 7, diversify your thinking. Be open to change. Find out new ways of doing things. Find out how people are doing. I mean, I was totally motivated by going over to 1871, and I may start just wearing blue jeans. I don't know. You know, it's like I'm wrestling. But here's the thing. I'm in the question. I'm wrestling with what is the best way to get the most out of my employees. What's the culture they need to have so they can do the very best work for our clients, so that our clients can do the very best work for their stakeholders and so on. Number 8, orient towards principle-based operations. In our organization, the number one thing we focus towards, and this is our sales strategy, is doing excellent work. We can make more calls, have more meetings, send out more proposals than the next guy, but if our work is not excellent, we will slide and go down, and maybe a slow death. But it'll take us down quicker than anything else. So we have a principle of excellence in everything we do. Another principle we have is workability. It's like, you know, earlier this week, one of our 2 keys to the restrooms that we share with the rest of the floor in our building got lost. I was like, get us a second key. Because it would be very bad if we had no keys to the restrooms. It would be like that cruise ship, right? So just workability is a good thing. It's just things like that. So what principles are in your organizations? What principles are you aligned to between you and your teammates and all of your stakeholders? Okay, number 9. Jump into the generation gap. This is a huge one for all of us. There's 4 generations out in the workplace and the community right now. We've got people born before the war, we've got the baby boomers, we've got Generation Y, we've got the millennials.
We have a form in their folder that
Great.
points to these, so I just want to have you pull that out if you didn't catch it before.
And this is the hardest thing for me about getting old.
Here's the blue jeans question.
Yes, it's totally because I'm looking at it from a baby boomer perspective, and they're looking at it from a millennials perspective. And and we have to know we share the world with 3 other generations from the generation that each of us is in. And the last thing I'll say, number 10, is nurture compelling discontent. Really good leaders are rarely satisfied. And I was working with a coach last Saturday. I'm in the middle of a tremendous amount of pressure. I've got over 1,000 people coming to a conference in 6.5 weeks, and there's just a lot that's not done. And my brain is very oriented to. My coach said, "John, you're in the middle of a storm, and you're at the helm." He knows I'm a sailor, and he said, "And you desperately, your brain wants to drop anchor and relax." And yet you know that you're in a squall, actually, not just a storm, a squall. And I've got to keep that chart right in front of me. I've got to think about the next couple of paces we're going to make in the storm. I've got to redeploy my crew to every station we need people at, and what needs to get done for the safety of the ship and so that we can get to where we're going. And so that's tied to just not being satisfied, and we are oriented. The human condition is about orienting to wanting to be satisfied. And how willing are each of us willing to just be not satisfied and to just constantly scan for things that are not working? And are we willing to talk about them? And I'm not talking about being the naysayer of everything or the Grinch or anything, but to look at those things that clearly are not working and say somehow, somewhere, someone needs to address these things. So why don't I'll just give you a couple of heroes in my life and then we'll stop. So I mentioned Heartland Alliance. This is the Reverend Dr. Sid Moen, who's the CEO. He's been CEO for over 30 years. I have learned so much from this man, from helping him with his communications and being on his board. He's just really taught me really about the social issues of our time that have really influenced kind of how I've spent my career. Dr. Muhammad Yunus, I had a chance to meet, as did Shanta, this past April. Our Foundation for Transformational Leadership gave Dr. Yunus the Transformational Leadership Award. Many of you know Dr. Yunus founded the whole world of microlending and Grameen Bank. And out of his vision, millions and millions of people are working their way out of poverty all over the world. And it's really quite something. Here we are, it's my younger son Jasper on my right, interviewing Dr. Yunus last April. This is Dr. Bob and Dr. Judith Wright. I encourage you to look at their website, transformweekendtraining.com. These two people came into my life about 25 years ago. They are students of transformation, and they have studied the top humanistic psychology thought leaders of the last 100 years and brought back things that have been forgotten from those thought leaders. They have developed their own methodologies. They've studied neuroscience, and their commitment to the well-being of people in the world is overwhelming to me. And so they're heroes of mine as well. This is Scott Stephen. Scott and I were in the ring, boxing ring, last spring. Scott hit me, and I had a freak accident. And if it wasn't for Scott, I wouldn't be standing here today. And I had a visit to the other side. I had a 2-week stay in the hospital. It changed my life. But if Scott had not known how to do CPR, I would not be able to stand here today.
Wow.
So Scott had an experience of killing someone and then bringing them back. Yeah, that's our deal. Yeah. This is my wife and my children who motivate me every day to do the work that I do. So thank you all, and be happy to. Do we have time for a few questions?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good.